Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Before we jump right in, just want to quickly thank a few of our partners and sponsors. First of all, thank you Microsoft for being a sponsor of Startup Grind El Paso, as well as UTEP and Sandbox Ventures for being partners of ours. And of course, thank you Rodrigo for being here with us today. So hello, and would love to we know that you are from El Paso, and so would love to start with the typical El Paso question is what high school did you go to?
Right. It's funny that question, when I saw it in our conversation, it's so funny because it's a question I haven't heard in a very long time. So background for everyone here is that I grew up in El Paso for most of my life, left when I was 18, and we'll get to all this later. And I've been away from El Paso for 20 years. And I just came back about 7-8 months ago. And so I've been hearing this question again, and it tickles me because I haven't heard it in 20 years. But to answer your question, I grew up here. I went to Cathedral High School, class of 2002.
Gotcha. Did you, which side of town did you grow up on? Close to
I grew up on what was then far east side. So corner of, let's say, George Dieter and Montana. And for I guess the freshman year and until I got my license in sophomore year, I used to sometimes take the bus to school, which was a major pain in the butt to ride the Sun Metro from George Dieter, Montana stop all the way to downtown and then a little walk to the high school. That was something, man. So definitely don't miss those days, especially in the hot. I'm kind of getting reacclimated to what El Paso weather is like. And dang, I forgot how hot it was here. It's something else.
That's funny. Cool. Well, cool. So you're going to a cathedral, and I guess when did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you determine what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were in middle school or in high school? And
yeah,
what was it?
I was a pretty big nerd in high school and was deep into, I think, 3 areas. One was kind of building computers. By that, I mean sort of building bare bones systems, ordering parts and building them for family members or friends, or trying to, I was really into gaming. So trying to build my own little gaming rigs and things. And so that was a big area of interest, kind of followed from many, many years prior of, the usual sort of electrical engineering type mentality of taking things apart, trying to put them back together, more often than not breaking the vacuum or the radio. But I kind of had that background and interest, but I was also really interested in a lot of speech and debate type activities like mock trial, speech and debate in high school, and often would go to tournaments in different states, Chicago, Illinois, and Texas. And so was really interested in that area and how extemporaneous speaking seemed to really call on me. And so in my junior year of high school, I went to some program, a conference in Washington, D.C. And it was, I think, the National Youth Leadership Forum, something like this. And it was broken up by topics. And because I enjoyed mock trial so much, I attended a conference by this organization on law. And if you could imagine like a conference center, right? Like the Don Haskins Conference Center, or maybe UTEP has a lot of conference centers. They organized something like 50 lawyers to come and give different talks and seminars about what their career was like. And I attended one by a patent prosecution attorney, this gentleman, Mike Braglidaca. And I just fell in love with his job. I thought it was so cool. He was doing high technology, so that kind of nerdy interest in computers and technology that I had. And he was doing law, convincing the patent office to grant protections to an inventor and give them a monopolistic control over that invention. And I thought that was so cool. So once I heard that, I kind of came home and I set the train on the tracks. I mean, I said, okay, I researched the #1 patent prosecution law firm in the world. It was Fish and Richardson. I kind of worked backwards and I realized, okay, I need an engineering degree so I can take the patent bar. I need to be a lawyer. and then I could do this job when I'm 25. And that's literally what I did. I just kind of went heads down on that goal. Went to college in New Haven, Connecticut, went to Yale, did electrical engineering. Even though I sucked at math, it was so hard for me to kind of get past that. I was horrible at math. Kind of the humanities were way more my interest and strong suit. So bared through all the physics and math, and eventually ended up finding it to be very beautiful and loved it. And then from college, went straight to law school, knowing exactly what law schools specialized in patent litigation, patent prosecution work. So I ended up at Columbia in New York, and did my 3 years there, plus some internships. And because I knew exactly what law firm I wanted to go to, I started networking with people really early, like my first year of law school, and meeting people and talking to them and saying, hey, this is where I want to work. This is my dream place. And I think they thought that was, I guess, naive, endearing, and foolish. And someone there who later became my mentor just took a shine on me and really helped me navigate the process of getting a summer clerkship internship there, and eventually turning that into a job offer. So that's kind of the long-winded answer to what did I want to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a patent lawyer, and was so focused on it that I think looking back on it, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't fully understand what it was, what it meant, and what my life would be like in that career. And if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have made different decisions. I would have, I'll call that playing classical music. It's like, here are the notes on the sheet, and you just got to memorize. You got to play the notes, and that's it. It's very structured. I kind of wish I'd played more jazz, like some general musical theme, and then just kind of riff and explore and find things, because I feel like I spent a good 7 years of my life really focused on this goal that at the end of it, I didn't find as rewarding as I had hoped or wanted it to be. And so, hindsight's 2020. If I knew then what I know now, my love and interest for building product and startups, gosh, I should have just graduated and went straight to Silicon Valley and soaked up all the craziness that was the early 2000s. That would have been pretty interesting. I wonder how much more I would know and have learned about this space that I love. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And so, yeah, you mentioned, completely off topic, you mentioned taking apart vacuum cleaners when you were a kid. And I think I saw recently on your Facebook that you were taking apart a vacuum cleaner with your kids. So
I was, yes. We had a little Eufy robotic vacuum, and we tore it apart, and we're playing with some of the solenoids and motors, and just watching their eyes kind of light up when you applied just DC current from a battery to a little motor, and the motor whirs. They're like, what? That's crazy. That's super cool.
That's cool. Cool. And so I think you touched on this a little bit, but so you went on to study electrical engineering. Which college did you do that at? And then you also went into to study law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ended up going to Yale for electrical engineering, and did my 4 years there. It was sort of an interesting roundabout way to do electrical engineering too, because Yale doesn't specialize in it, but I was really interested in the humanities. And so I was combining a very strange dual degree in film studies and electrical engineering. And my dream, kind of the side dream to being a lawyer, was, I want to work on some kind of film technology. And the big thing at the time was the Matrix bullet time. That was this humongous technological advancement in how you could film movies using multiple cameras and stitch together the sort of digital composites to create that effect where they went around the person as they sort of slow motion dodged, right? I thought that was so cool. And that was the direction my senior thesis was heading in. But in that process, I had a senior thesis advisor, this gentleman by the name of Herr Kozier, who really took me under his wing and got me excited about a completely different space called MEMS. It stands for Micro Electromechanical Systems, MEMES. And I just thought it was so fascinating. His project was on this thing called the hysteretic energy harvester. And there's this type of material, it's called piezoelectric materials, when you stretch it, strain it, stress it, it generates charge, electricity. And so he was working on this project called Smart Sand, where you could mix in very, very small micro scale sensors, right, into sand, cement, gravel, and the natural forces of wind pushing a building or a bridge or cars going over cement created some of those forces of stress and shear and strain, such that if you could store enough energy in a sensor, you might be able to have it pulse out a radio signal and say that the health of the concrete is okay at this point. So that was the project. I thought it was so interesting, and it was an opportunity to really build product, and that, that's what I love, right? Like, I should have known that at the time. I was really excited by the project. And so that really changed the course of this film studies fantasy I had. And I just kind of really focused on this project and got really excited by it.
Cool. And cool. Well, let's now jump into how you went from, well, yeah. So after you graduated, you did go and do some time doing patent law, right? And
yeah.
When did you decide to start working on your first startup?
I think it was the first year of, well, even, it's funny, I recently moved back to El Paso. And so I was packing up a lot of my belongings in New York City. And there was this box that said confidential on it. What the heck is this? So I opened it up, and they were a bunch of papers and memos that I wrote to myself and to a couple of friends from 2007 or thereabouts. And I was pitching them on essentially what was later what might be known now as like Plants vs. Zombies, Farmville, a bunch of little apps. And it was this huge, long, what we might call today like a business model canvas or kind of business plan. And to hear and to read it and sort of hear my naive voice in 2007 talking about the users and the metrics and the UI, it was a little embarrassing to myself to read it, but also kind of cute and charming. I was like, that's funny. So I think the answer is that even in law school, though I was preparing to be a patent lawyer, I was still somewhere inside of me, in between studying the law, kind of writing and preparing these memos to myself and to friends, like, we should do this, and if we get this, we do that. And there were all these business ideas, right? Startup ideas. And I just didn't know anything about anything in that world. And so just wrote them and sent them to friends and was hoping to find someone who would be interested to go forward, right? I'm sure we could all kind of empathize and see ourselves in that. And so I have a distinct memory of having lots of conversations with friends in law school, and then people I met even at the law firm I was at. We had this very ridiculous group name called ABC. It was the Aspiring Billionaires Club. And we would get together every, Thursday for lunch. And it was just pitching ideas. And what if we did this? It was a really close friend of mine from the law firm. And so we just shared so many, and this was like early days of This Week in Startups with Jason Calacanis. So we would listen to every episode religiously and discuss it and break it apart. And so that was, I think, the early parts of the journey where I was bit by the bug and I didn't even know it. I was very excited to do something in a technological space that touched product. It was in that first year of law that I was also realizing that the practice of law, although it was very, very intellectually stimulating and exciting to take apart a brief, to battle against opposing counsel on the other side of a litigation case, there's something really exciting and intellectually rewarding about playing this sort of like chess game with another group of very smart people who are trying to outmaneuver you on this litigation. The business model of law, I was not very excited by it. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and it's a services industry where you charge by the hour. There's a finite number of hours in every day, multiplied by the number of people who can bill the client. And so you're always living the growth of this company and this business model of a law firm is always growing or shrinking based on the volume of clients and work they give you, And if it expands, you suddenly have to hire a bunch of people to help you keep up with that and capitalize on that growth. But then B, there's always a down cycle where the clients leave, change service providers, or litigation's over, and then you have too many people. Now you got to fire people or place them somewhere else or find some way to get more work for them. And I just really dislike this constant cyclical up and down, up and down, up and down. And it was basically human services. When you charge by the hour, you're always constrained by how many bodies you have, right? And that, as I was listening to all this week in startups, and as I was having all these lunch sessions about the ABC Club, it was very clear that products, software in particular, has near zero marginal fixed, marginal cost. Like every additional unit you sell, once you build the software, theoretically, you can continue selling more of it, more of it, more of it. And I was just really, really excited by that. I thought that's a cool business model. That's what I want to be in. Not so much on the services side. And so this is all kind of happening the second year of my legal days. And combined with these lunches and all the podcasts I was listening to, I decided to then start a small e-commerce company as a way to dip my toes in the water and see what this business stuff is all about. So I was visiting my family here in El Paso often. And so what I did is I would go to Juarez and I would go to Mercado and I would buy statues and whatever, like trinkets, whatever I could find. I'd load up my car with a car trunk full of stuff from Mercadito. And I'd cross it, tax-free thanks to NAFTA. And I'd take tons of pictures of it and I'd start selling them on eBay, started putting them on this little e-commerce website I had called Cubo Mexico. And then I also started going to the candy stores and buying tamarindos and all the Mexican candy. And the hypothesis was that there are these very large and growing pockets of populations in the US of Mexican first generation immigrants, but also second, third generation immigrants who perhaps have this nostalgic desire to eat the foods and the things and have the things of their youth or of their previous ancestors. And that was the thesis. It turned out to not work as well as I wanted. It turned out most of my customers, just going by names, which of course is inaccurate, but looking at the names of my customers, they were not Latinos. And like 80% of them were not Latino. And so it was interesting that as I interviewed a couple of the Latino ones and the people who did buy, and I interviewed other folks who didn't buy, but I had a chance to talk to them, there was this sort of, I guess I would call it at the time, this is 2006, 2007, 2008, there just wasn't an access to credit cards, debit cards in these populations. And as a result, no access to credit cards means that very little likelihood of buying anything online. And they weren't trained or they weren't already accustomed to buying things online. And not many people were at the time, right? And so crashed and burned, but in a very, very slow way where I kept trying to make it work, and I spent advertising dollars, and it was just like this wonderful playground sandbox to learn what is cash flow, what is cost, what is an e-commerce website all about, how do you play with HTML and CSS to make it look how you want, all these different things, right? Incorporation, and did it all the wrong way. And that experience, I think, towards the third year of my practice of law made me feel like, okay, this is really exciting. And I enjoy working on this way more than I enjoy working on legal briefs and whatever I was doing. Mostly because anybody here who's doing a startup knows that in the early days, 1 minute of your time and effort turns into this tangible output that you can touch and feel, and you can see it, and you're like, dang, I did that. That's super cool. And that's very rewarding, right? And the law firm is the complete opposite. You work for 30 hours to write this brief, which is like an argument that you present to a judge. Judge takes it, and like a few months later, he'll give you an answer about whether he thought you were right. And then the answer is not even that exciting or rewarding. It's like, oh, this happened. And you're just like, cool. This is like a 4-year litigation. This is one tiny step in this like massive multi-million-dollar problem. And so there just wasn't this feeling of having impact that the startup, the little e-commerce thing, was giving me that that buzz and that excitement. So somewhere along the line, I started doing co-founder dating websites. I forget which ones, but all the ones you could Google and find, I'm sure I had a profile on there. And I was looking for a co-founder. I did a lot of co-founder dates in New York City, met a lot of dogs, and met one finally that I thought, okay, this is really exciting. He's doing something really cool. He already has a little product going. He billed himself as a CTO. That felt right. He showed me the product and he invited me to work on it. And so I took some time off, PTO from the law firm, and dedicated 2 weeks to working with him in the trenches, and confirmed to myself, this is really exciting. I should be doing this. Like, what am I doing? I'm still a lawyer. If this fails, I can go back to being a lawyer. No worries. And so I jumped. I started working with him. And we applied to an accelerator in New York City called Dream It Ventures. We got accepted. And really, to show Dream It how serious I was about the experience in the program, we were at the final interview, and I didn't want to go into the interview and them ask me the question, like, when are you going to quit? So before the interview, I gave my notice to the law firm. I said, hey, at 2 weeks, I'm leaving. So I was able to say this. I felt very, very strong to be able to say this in my interview, like, hey, I already gave notice. Like, this is my full-time commitment. Who knows if that was the thing that put us over, but in any case, we got it. And this was 2011, maybe. And boy, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I mean, just didn't know anything about business to business sales for software. And thankfully, they had advisors, a wonderful advisor, Scott Simonelli, who was a B2B salesperson of a software company that was successful and acquired. And even when I think back to what he taught us, I must have felt or should have felt embarrassed by how little I knew. Like, I didn't even know how to ask the right questions, like very vague, like, how do I use Salesforce, or like, what's the CRM for? I can kind of poke around, but I don't know what this is for, and so just failed all the wrong ways. Instead of working at a startup and learning how to do all these things, I thought I'll just do it myself, and through gumption and sheer willpower, I'll learn it. And I guess we did, but just took a hell of a long time, and it was painful. And so, long story short, on that company, we started it, received fundraising from the accelerator. Just quickly, within 6-7 weeks of them helping us, invalidated that this was even a problem that needed to be solved by anybody, and that customers even wanted this thing that we were building. So we pivoted, did a subscription commerce company, had some nice revenue really early. Like, we did just a little bit over 6 figures of revenue within 4 or 5 weeks of marketing the product. This was an adults-only subscription commerce company that would send intimate experiences to couples. So we would produce these experiences, put together these kind of box kits, and then mail them to customers. So we were charging, I don't know, $50 a month for this experience. And before we knew, we had a couple hundred customers, and there we were at a warehouse packing all these, vibrators and experience, like, toys and all the kinds of stuff. And we felt like, oh, this is something. But fundraising for that idea was just god awful. Like, basically every firm, every VC has a morality clause, which means that they can't invest in gambling, guns, or sex, because they have LPs who put those restrictions on them. I didn't know that. So, I just got politely shooed out and like, thank you for coming. No, this is not for us. Thank you very much. And so I got shown the door a lot. And we thought, well, that's okay. We'll bootstrap this, and we got something going. Well, 2 guys renting out a warehouse once a month, generating some revenue, sure, but eventually we couldn't get the flywheel going. We didn't have enough cash flow to invest enough in marketing to grow this quickly enough to offset the burn rate that we were feeling as founders, right? Because we weren't paying ourselves. And so my co-founder at that time, Chris, at some point just kind of tapped out. I was like, Rod, sorry, man, I can't keep going. I don't have any more savings. I got to get a job. So what was already like a 5-person job for 2 crazy founders turned into one job, or 5-person job for 1 crazy person, me. And fortunately, I found a buyer. One of our competitors acquired the company and all the assets, the customer list, the revenue streams. And it was, the first time I had to negotiate an acquisition. It was interesting, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I'm sure they like took me for everything that we were worth. I was just happy to get this off my plate and pay down credit card debt that we were using to fund the marketing and the advertising, and just to be clean of it, yeah, done. So that was really exciting. So everyone won, I guess, in that scenario. They got what they wanted, I got what I wanted. And there was this kind of moment where like, okay, now what do I do? Do I go back to being a lawyer? Do I start in the company? I still felt this kind of burning desire to keep going. And so what happened was that in the middle of that company, the subscription commerce company, we had met someone that was helping us code things here and there. This guy, Sandeep. And, really, I met him because I was doing these investment pitches at different conferences. And I remember where it was a conference, I think, called Ultralight Startups in New York City. So I was up on the stage pitching, and I was trying to get an investor to invest in us, this guy, Norbert. And he said, yeah, my guy, Sandeep, he's my tech guy. He's going to, poke under the hood and make sure everything looks good. And so we can invest. I was like, okay, great. He's like, he's going to be there at this event you're pitching at. Sweet. So I go to the event, I do my pitch, and Sandeep, rolls up and is like, hey, what's up? I like what you're doing. I'd love to talk more, see what's under the hood. So I was like, that sounds great. So we exchanged numbers, and the next day we start talking, and we're shooting the breeze, catching up. And so before we get to the, brass tacks and let's poke under the hood and check out the code, I asked him, so how do you know this investor, Norbert? He said you were going to talk to me. He's like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I was like, yeah, this guy. He said you were going to talk to me. He's like, you got the wrong guy. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know any Norberts. And so I later found out that this person, Sandeep, that I met, who would then become my co-founder a few years later, was just the wrong Sandeep. There was another Sandeep at that conference who was going to find me and talk to me, never did. And just serendipity. I met Sandeep, who then became my co-founder, my startup spouse, like my homie, and we became friends. And, fast forward in 2013, he was coming off of a acquisition from a startup. He was a front-end developer for that company. And eventually he kind of said like, hey, I want to do something with you. We've been kind of working, on and off on your project for a little bit. Let me show you what I've been working on my side hustle. And so he's like, join me. And so I did. And so it's interesting, and I know one of the questions lots of people ask is like, how do you meet your co-founder? How do you find them? And it's so hard to find a co-founder. You're out there looking for one, hunting for one, especially if you're, doing the co-founder dating. And I see it so often, these posts that go out, these emails that go out. It's like, oh, I got this great idea. I just need a CTO to do blah, blah, blah. Boy, like that's going about it the wrong way. And I find that those rarely work out. If you feel like you're finding a person, just kind of wanting a code monkey or something like that, man, that rarely works. And I think of it more as finding your soulmate or your spouse. Like, you got to do all kinds of meetings and dates and kind of feel each other out and do projects together and see how you work under pressure and stress and how you treat each other. And, is there integrity? Is there loyalty? Is there all these things that you might think about in a relationship? And all those things, I happened to get lucky in the sense that I met this guy. We weren't thinking of being co-founders, but over the course of 2 years, we got to know each other, worked on this project together, the two companies that I just described that failed. And he felt comfortable to invite me to join him. And I felt comfortable to work with him. And so that led us to 2013 and the founding of Listen Loop, which is really the company that kind of took me from, okay, this was me playing founder and learning, to really understanding what does it mean to raise venture capital? What does it mean to grow a company, hire, sadly fire employees? What does it mean to eventually sell this business and have it be acquired by a much larger player who wants to incorporate the product line that we built into a larger suite of products? So that's a very long, sort of almost 6-year tenure between 2013 and late 2018. But, that's how I got to be there. Right. And so I'll stop there because I know there's a lot of content, but if you want to keep going on that kind of journey, I'm happy to dive deeper.
Yeah, I think probably one of the things that would be really interesting to dig in on is, kind of relating to the title of the event, is just like, how the heck did you get revenue so quickly in a startup that was less than a year old?
Right. Yeah, this is what they say, right? In all the different graphics and little posts that you see, it's like a overnight success, 6 years in the making. The story of Listen Loop and how we were able to generate just over $1 million in like 12 months is that we first started in a completely different area. At the time when we started, it was Feature Kicker. We applied to an accelerator program called Boost VC in San Mateo, California, put on by Adam Draper. And we received a lot of support from them and learning more about what it means to be B2B sales software, and targeting the product manager as our customer, and really finally understanding what does it mean to interview your customer and prospects, understand what their problem really is. And through that process, just realized again that we weren't solving a hair on fire morphine problem. It was nice to have this product that we were building at the time in 2013 was this JavaScript tag that customers would insert into their software so that we could pop up modal windows and ask for feedback or ask survey questions inside of a product experience. I think we see that more and more nowadays with things like WalkMe or Intercom, in-app kind of chat notifications, right? Stuff like that. So we were doing that based on user behavior that was happening inside of a client's mobile or web application. Just cool, but just not a real problem that product managers were, really suffering under. And so we had a client who was a marketer instead of a product manager. And he said, your technology is pretty cool. I kind of want to use your technology in advertising. We're like, okay, well, we know this doesn't work. So let's see what that's about. So we started talking to him, Diego. He would eventually become an advisor to the company. And we just learned more about what's the problem, how can we solve it. And so we started doing these hyper personalized ads. I mean, like I would put your face in an ad just for you. And if you've seen retargeted ads when you go visit Nike.com and then you see the shoe following you around, well, think like that. But I put your face in the ad and saying like, hey, Ivan, it's been a while since you chatted with us. This is Roger, your friendly salesperson, just reaching out. And it was going to be a play for B2B salespeople to have a very light touch, but omnipresent light touch to their prospects in what is usually a very long sales journey, right? In B2B sales, it could be 12 months, 18 months. And we wanted to have these really personalized ads so that we could boost engagement. And it was very interesting. And we did that was one of the highlights of building product, because that demo was tight. Like you would show someone in the middle of a demo, you would tell them like, hey, go visit this website. And then we would, on the spot in the middle of the demo, they'd start seeing ads with their face on it without me doing anything, because that's what the technology that we built did. It made for a lot of jaw-dropping kind of wow moments. So that was super cool. But what I learned is that even though the product was really cool, ultimately there were constraints on the business model that didn't work, didn't make sense for a venture-backed company. Namely, that retargeting always works off of the amount of web traffic that a company has, an organization has. And even some of the largest clients that we were servicing, Intuit, for instance, they had tens of thousands of website traffic to the pages that they tagged. Okay, great. Well, that's not a lot of meat to work with in terms of retargeting. And charging $12,000, $30,000 a year for this kind of service or software was always felt constrained by the amount of traffic that they had, right? Because it's very weird to charge someone $30,000 a year for them to spend $2,000 of ads, of ad budget. Like it just, the math didn't work, didn't make sense. It was very hard to convince marketers of the value there. And so we went back to the drawing board, man, and we raised money on that concept. And shortly after raising, we realized like, oh crap, it's not going to work. And so we had staffed up, we had hired lots of salespeople and customer support folks to get ready for the growth phase. And shortly thereafter, we realized, oh man, we got to make the tough call of letting a lot of people go, good people that had become like family to us in the first couple of months of them working with us. Because it just, the right move was to regroup, find product market fit. You can't be carrying bodies and people that aren't doing or contributing to that core mission. So it was very painful for them, I'm sure, for us to actually pull the trigger on it. But it gave us a year extra runway to figure it out. And what we did is we went back to all the customers that were doing this personalized retargeting and interviews. Again, hour-long interviews many times for each client. We had maybe 30 clients. And what we learned is that what they really wanted to do was give us a list of companies that they wanted to target. So they didn't want to just target random folks who came to their website. They wanted to give me a list. Here's 100 companies I want you to target with ads. Bring them to me. And we're like, okay, I get it. We don't know how the hell we were going to do that. But we spent a year figuring it out and playing with the advertising pipelines and the technology and what was possible and what was not possible. And we found a way. We found a way to make that happen. And we built this workflow where a client could come, give us a CSV list of their target companies. They would tell us a couple of job titles that they were interested in. They would put in an ad budget and put their credit card in, bang, all this in 5 minutes. And so it became this really, really simple self-serve web application for businesses to target companies that they wanted to go after. And this became known in the space as account-based marketing. We didn't know what the hell it was. That's just what that's what people were telling us they wanted to do. And so as we started kind of describing it, people would be like, oh yeah, ABM, account-based marketing, that's super cool. So I started looking, I was like, what the hell is this ABM stuff? So I started Googling it, and it's really interesting. Go do a search later on it, but there is this kind of moment in 2015, 2016, where the number of Google searches on this term just goes like whoop, like this. It was this dormant trend that one large company that was venture backed in the space was trying to create a new category that they were trying to own. That company was called Demandbase. And they were spending venture backed sums of money to educate the market on what was account-based marketing. Why is it important? And we just happened to be at the right place at the right time with enough knowledge about the client, the marketer, their pain points that they independently had told us. And we saw an opportunity where we said, okay, Demandbase is doing it that way. They're going heavy on professional services. They're going heavy on a managed service experience. It's very enterprise. Their clients are like Dell and Intel. We're going to go for the long tail, all self-serve, beautiful UI, just get you in and out on campaigns. And we had different kinds of problems, right? They were hunting for elephants. We were chasing deer maybe, and mostly mice in the field, and keeping up with churn, dealing with customer support, like the kinds of challenges that we faced relative to them were very different. And we just carved out a really good niche in the business for us. And once we launched and started kind of going out to market, telling people what we were doing, I mean, I would just email people, and you could see my waterfall B2B conversion rates, right? Like I'd email 100 people, I would get this many leads, I'd do this many demos. And shortly after the demo, I wouldn't even have to send a proposal to close. The person would just go online and do it themselves. It was beautiful. And so that's why the flywheel just started turning super fast. We started getting, 2 clients, 5 clients, 10 clients. We got a couple of blog posts, some exposure. These people told other people. And it was just such a low touch sales. It was like 1 call closes, couple of follow-ups, and you get people on. And within 12 months, we were, just over $1 million in revenue, and trying to figure out, okay, now how the hell do we keep them? Because so many SMB clients either go out of business, or their campaigns, their ad campaigns, are extremely cyclical. They don't have war chest size marketing budgets of like $500,000 to say, I'm going to do an always on campaign, go. Right. So the challenge really was, okay, we got this far. How do we build the product and extend the product to make it stickier so that we do something besides ads? right? That was the realization. So we started going into website personalization. We started trying different product lines to keep the customers that we were getting so easily. And so that's, that's the journey and how we got to be there. To kind of put a bow on it, the highlight is that, yes, we were able to generate $1 million in sales in 12 months, but it's because we were so prepared and positioned at the right place, right time, and we just caught this trend in the market for ABM. We were able to kind of speak and position ourselves around that. And people were just Google searching and finding us, right? And people were talking about us because we were one of the early and few players in the market who were offering that. And for most companies who wanted to do it, yeah, they would go do a demo with competitor 1, competitor 2, but then they would have this crazy long sales process, consultative. Let me see who you are. What? Oh, I don't know. Like, it doesn't sound like you've got the right problem. Like, all that, or they can just come to us and start a campaign in 5 minutes, right? So that was the insight into the market that really allowed us to jump on that opportunity, and we did. And so to kind of finish the story, we continued that. We spent a couple of years trying to figure out how do we keep these customers and make this app really sticky, because the advertising, like I said, works and it's great, but it's the customer base that needs something other than just ads to keep them with us. And around that time, we met a company at a conference. We were at a marketing conference called the Marketo Marketing Summit, and all the who's who in marketing and marketing technology are there. We were a vendor displaying in our little booth space. And this company comes up to us, integrate.com. They were also marketing technology, much larger. And the CPO, the chief product officer, and his VP of product came up to us and said, "Oh, we love what you're doing. We got to partner or buy you." We're just like, okay. You hear that kind of stuff. You're just like, yeah, right. Okay. And so we exchanged information, and a month later he reached out. He was like, "Hey, I was serious. Could we do a partnership? We're exploring something in the space. We're thinking about building this ourselves. Why don't we just kind of use your technology and white label it, and you could take, a piece of our revenue?" Like, yeah, that sounds good. They had access to customers that we weren't going to touch. They were playing enterprise sales, and so they had customers like Adobe, Dell, name your marquee client. And so they were reselling our technology to these clients. And that was, phenomenal. Like, what a great revenue stream, right? So as we saw more and more of our dollars shift, the volume of dollars shift to them, and their customers stayed on always on campaigns. It was awesome. Like, they weren't churning. They had enough budgets to keep the lights on and keep campaigns going for a long time. So in that process, we're like, okay, how do we do that? Maybe we should go up market. And even just as we started thinking that, they approached us with a letter of intent, and we're like, "Hey, we want to acquire you." We're like, "Oh, crap." Right. So then became this whole process that kind of caught us off guard. I should have known better, right? I just had never been to that stage of the startup game. I should have been able to see that that's maybe where things were headed and prepared better, creating more of a bidding war, creating opportunities to talk to other people before we got to that letter of intent stage. Because once you get there, they start trying to lock you up and don't talk to other people, right? Because they don't want you to create a bidding war. So it was a very interesting and volatile couple of months during that acquisition process. I remember having physical manifestations, symptoms of stress, anxiety, and just how difficult it was to negotiate with someone who has way more market power, has done it before. You know what the hell you're doing. It was like amateur boxer going up against Muhammad Ali and hoping you don't just get completely knocked out. So it was very, very intense, but eventually it ended very well. In late December, early January 2019, late December 2018, we closed on the deal and became part of the Integrate family. And it's been awesome. We really have integrated our product line into their product, their software, and they're really trying to kind of consolidate the market on all these kind of what's known as demand generation activities using their software. So we're one product in this multi-suite of products that have awesome clients like Adobe, Dell, Workfront, et cetera. So it's really exciting to kind of see all of this come full circle, right? So that's the whole journey. And I'll pause there. I'm sure there's maybe you have more thoughts, Ivan, or want to direct the conversation elsewhere.
Yeah, I definitely want to open it up for Q&A, but I guess just like a brief answer this question, because I think it's a good one, just because of how long you've been doing it is just, how long, and it also adds to like why you're able to move so quickly on Listen Loop. But how long did it take you to get like a really good grip on entrepreneurship in your head?
I'd say 5-6 years of doing it full time, for me to really learn the ins and outs. And that's just like just getting a good grip. I don't even think that's doing it well or particularly, a great job. Just knowing where the landmines are, knowing where the potholes are, and how to avoid them, and how to be both tactical and strategic at the right time. Because I think that's one of the challenges that most startup founders face when you don't know, when you haven't been through it. There are these important moments where you have to be tactical. You got to know what to do, how to do it, step 1, step 2, step 3. There are times you have to be strategic and think 6, 12, 18 months out, and be able to build a good story that you need to tell customers, partners, investors, employees, hires, right? And like, I think one of the mistakes that people make a lot is that they're either too much of one or the other. So you'll find founders who are extremely strategic, and they're thinking like they've got plans in their minds, castles in the skies, 6 years out, this huge vision, but then they can't operationalize. They can't just get down to business and make it happen. What's step 1? What's step 2? Do it, right? And then you have other people who are extremely operational and tactically driven, but can't see, a few months out ahead to figure out what things they should even work on. Is that really the most valuable use of your time? Yes, you could turn this crank right here, but is that really going to get you to where you need to be in order to, grow or meet whatever goals you have? And so learning how to balance those two things and when to do one or the other, extremely important, because you don't have all the time in the world. You've got a limited runway, you have your burn rate, and you're eating through it. Most startups raise 12 to 18 months of capital, and every day counts, right? So if you're just wasting your time on doing something you shouldn't be doing, you're gonna run out of money and you're gonna die, So it takes about 5 years, I think, to get a good grip on that.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but I know it's limited. One question, just it doesn't have to do with entrepreneurship or anything like that. Like it's mostly personal. Like, how did you deal with like your personal life? Like, did you give up stuff that you like to do? Like, what about family? Like,
That's a great question. Yes, I did give up things I enjoyed doing pre-startup, post-startup. Pre-startup, I was very interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was training for a competition. I was going out with my friends a lot. I was freshly married at the time. And post-startup,
how did that work? The whole marriage thing.
I'm divorced. I think it's unrelated. I was half kidding. I mean, the divorce is unrelated to the amount of work and commitment it takes, but it perhaps is related to a immaturity on my part to know who or what I wanted to be. Right. So like, if you think about it, I met someone and was on a path to be a partner at some white shoe law firm in New York City to make a few $1,000,000 a year as a partner in like the next 10 years. And that was the platform. That was like the vision, the shared dream, the what we were going to do and how we wanted to live our lives. And then one day I'm just like, nah, I want to be a startup swashbuckling pirate and not make any income. And let's go. Right. And so that, of course, isn't like by itself a deal breaker. She wanted to be very supportive, et cetera. But it represents such a strong shift in your life values and what you want to accomplish, how you see your future. how much risk you're willing to take to chase these ambitions or goals, that those things, if you're not aligned on those things, right? You even if you're like 5% or five degrees off over a long enough period of time, 8 years, 10 years, you end up growing apart over time. And so that's really the issue, not the startup per se. But yeah, I did have to sacrifice a lot of things to stay committed to my goals and what I wanted. I think that then versus now, it was really exciting, right? You mentioned like, did I give up things I enjoy doing? Yes, but in the sense of I gave up one thing I enjoyed doing for another thing I enjoyed doing. Like I enjoyed running my company. It was exciting. It was thrilling. I would wake up thinking about it, not from a stress or anxiety point of view, but just like, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to get this done and it's going to be awesome. And like, we're going to get this accomplished, and I don't know if you have the feeling, but for me, operating a company is like, I don't want to cheapen the experience, but sometimes I feel, or I can compare it to turn-based or real-time strategy games. I don't know if you play Civilization 6 or Old World or Red Alert or StarCraft, but there's like this really interesting kind of resource management, resource collection, growing this empire that I think is exciting. I'm tickled by that kind of gameplay. And startup is very similar. You have resource management, you have these dollars, these people, you got to get more people, you got to build an army, build a worker, build this farm over here because you need more workers and all that. And so like, I enjoy that. So hopefully, if you're going through that startup journey, you are feeling that too. What's different is that now, if I were to do another startup, I wonder how much I would enjoy that now, because people, I think I enjoyed that more earlier in my journey when it was novel. Now it's not novel, right? I know what needs to get done. It just needs to get done. Like it's less of a game, I think. So
where can we connect with you? I don't know if I even I don't know if you could do that, like post. There we go.
I just
Yeah,
put it in the chat.
Damn.
So,
give me a note.
Get
the LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll do one more question because I think Javier wanted to ask one as well.
Please, yes.
Yes, my question is, when the concept that you said, you started making money and then you realized at some point that maybe it wasn't a problem to solve. So do you think that, I admire your boldness to just do things and you just did it, right? So do you think that was like blissful ignorance in a sense, but it sounds like a good thing? Versus now, I wonder like how you define that experience. Like, do you define it as failure? Do you define it like, no, there's certain things that I had to go through that to become, more bold or whatever, or maybe you think maybe I should have researched more, or how do you feel about that whole thing? Because it sounds like a great thing that you did, but it also sounds like maybe like you sound a little bit disappointed, or something. So
yeah,
what is your attitude concerning that?
That's a great question, and good for you for picking up on that. I think this touches one of the most important aspects or characteristics of a startup founder, entrepreneur. And it's that if you've ever read the book Name of the Wind by, it escapes me, there is this character in the book who has this kind of magical capability, which is to split his mind into two halves and hold essentially two contradicting thoughts at the same time. And man, to me, that is the startup life. That is entrepreneurship. You have to simultaneously be stupid enough to do what I just described, to go forward, while at the same time be rational enough to stop yourself from doing stupid things and pause occasionally and change directions. And so, the answer of, or the question of, should I do opportunity X? If you stop and rationally calculate, should you do it? 99.999% of the time, the answer is no, you should not do it. it is not rational to start a company as like a founder. The opportunity costs are overwhelming. You would be much better paid elsewhere. Most things that you want to pursue could be sort of goals could be accomplished by other means without taking that much risk. And so if you just do a cold calculation, most opportunities don't make sense. They just don't. So you then have to almost convince yourself that that is wrong. You're going to do it anyway because you think that you see something that others don't. And that concept of holding these two contradictory thoughts define almost everything in startups. You have to simultaneously convince employees that what you're doing is awesome and you're going to grow, wow, join this rocket ship. While at the same time getting off that call and realizing, oh my God, my churn rate is this. We are so effed. And how the heck are we going to solve this problem? Oh my God, the sky is falling. And then turn around and talk to an investor, be like, oh, this company's blowing up. This is awesome. We're going to rock it. And then get off that call and go to your co-founder. Your co-founder is like, we're effed. We're not this and that compliant. Our database is melting. We don't have enough payroll to pay people. So it's like, there are so many opportunities to quit and just do something more sane. And you have to have this irrational, crazy desire to do this particular path. And so I think, to answer your question about my emotional state and why I did it, I think I was just irrational. I was bullish on, earlier I talked about how I kind of set the train on the tracks with respect to law. I kind of did the same thing. That's just my pattern. I set the train on a track. I'm going to do a startup. I don't care if it costs me whatever it costs me. And fortunately, it worked out. I had a life-changing acquisition and outcome, but man, it could have very easily not been that way. And then I'd be, crying into my milk about the opportunity cost of being a lawyer for 8 years and how much salary I could have made. And that would not have been a very good rational decision, right? That'd have been pretty reckless. So it's extremely personal, person to person kind of grappling with that question, because all of our ideas usually suck. They just suck. They don't have product market fit. They don't have founder product fit. It's too early. It's too late. There's always reasons why you shouldn't go forward. So something inside of you has to just push past that crap and say, no, I'm going to do it anyway, because I know better, or I think differently, or, whatever the case may be. And, I don't think any frameworks or people will tell you when that's the time, but you'll feel it inside of you. You'll wake up thinking about it. You'll go to sleep thinking about it. It'll bug you that you aren't doing it. It'll just eat you, and at some point you go forward, because it's a highly emotional decision as opposed to a rational mental decision. Does that answer your question, Javier?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, that was an awesome way to end this. Thank you so much, everybody. I even have Eddie texting me. I love this guy.
Thank you all for listening. It's always a pleasure to reminisce.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you so much, Rodrigo, for sharing your story and everything. If it's okay with you, well, I already shared your LinkedIn, and so hopefully people can connect with you.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. Everybody have
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Bye.
Brian.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.